This afternoon, we turn to the third of the great English empiricists, Locke, Berkeley, and now Hume. I said English empiricists. I should have said British empiricists. He's a Scotsman. Hume, coming as he does really only 50 years after John Locke. 1690 was John Locke's essay on human understanding, and 1748 was Hume's inquiry concerning human understanding. So in less than 50 years, a remarkable change takes place. From John Locke's optimism, almost rationalistic optimism, about the possibilities of empirical knowledge, to David Hume's skepticism about it. In fact, prior to 1748, because 9 years earlier, when he was only in his 20s, as you see, 1711 born, the treatise came out in 1739. It was actually finished, I think, in 1736. At that early age, he completed the treatise concerning human nature, which is much longer than the inquiry. There's an everyman edition, you know, those little compact blue volumes, 2 volumes of it. I was going to bring mine along, but discovered that 1 volume I'd loaned to somebody and never came back. So I was going to bring along the 1-volume edition, which is the standard scholarly edition, and discovered I'd loaned that to somebody and it never came back. So if you know of anybody who has Hume with my name in the front, chase that person and get it back. I loaned them to people last year when there was a Hume seminar going on. But in any case, the earlier book, the treatise, is longer. Hume comments that it fell stillborn from the press, and so apparently he wrote the inquiry in much shorter form, jazzing it up a little bit in order to get the literary fame which he confesses he was so anxious for. So the treatise is longer, fuller, and in talking about Hume, I'll be drawing on the treatise as well as the inquiry. Number of topics that he omits from the inquiry, as we'll see. The emphasis there in our knowledge of external things is really on our knowledge of cause-effect connections. A little bit on our knowledge of God, but in the treatise he's dealing with knowledge of cause-effect connections, knowledge of space, knowledge of time, knowledge of matter, knowledge of minds, much fuller discussion of the metaphysical topics, which we noticed are of importance in both Locke and Berkeley. Now, in both of these works, the treatise and the inquiry, his focus obviously is on epistemology. This is the main concern of this Enlightenment period. Catch it in the titles of the works. John Locke, an essay concerning human understanding. George Berkeley, principles of natural knowledge. David Hume, an inquiry concerning human understanding. Take it back, an essay on human understanding. And Leibniz, in responding to, no, let's see, it's Locke is an essay. That's right. Hume is the inquiry. And in responding to Locke, you may recall that Leibniz had written new essays on human understanding. So in this period, this is the focus of attention. you see. What is the possibilities for human knowledge? What sort of reach can human knowledge have in this age of reason, which of course is the age of scientific reason? What is the scope of scientific knowledge, in other words? And it's about this that Hume becomes quite skeptical. Now, in the treatise, he takes it that the key to settling philosophical disputes is the study of human nature. The study of human nature. That's why the book is entitled A Treatise. A treatise on human nature, you'll see. And he subtitles it to indicate that he's dealing with human nature by what he calls experimental method. The word experimental then had nothing to do with hypotheses and confirmation. It referred simply to the appeal to experience. So what he's trying to do is to provide an empirical account of human nature in relationship to two issues, he says: human belief and human action. Human belief and human action. And in the light of that subtitling, it's significant that he doesn't say human knowledge, because his main emphasis is on giving a descriptive psychology of human belief, and related to that of human nature as it affects ethics. Put that one other way. If we want to explain human belief, according to Hume, we have to turn from rationalist explanations. We believe what can be proven. We believe proportionately to the objective empirical evidence. Remember John Locke's evidentialist criterion. You have to turn away from that to an account of human psychology. Human nature leads us to believe. There's a psychological account of belief. And similarly with regards to not just moral belief, but moral action. We're led to moral action, again, not by the force of reasoning about ethical principles, but simply by the psychology of human feelings, moral feelings, which lead us to act. So in both cases, he's offering more of a descriptive psychology than he is a rational, logical proof or evidential justification. His complaint is that the obscurity of ideas misleads people like Descartes and Locke and Spinoza and even Berkeley. Now it sounds sort of odd to say the obscurity of ideas when Descartes and Locke were stressing clear and distinct ideas. His point is simply that ideas are not clear and distinct. And in that sense, he reminds me of a friend of mine some while ago who used to say when somebody said of an idea, well, it's perfectly clear to me, his response would be, well, I'm sorry, I don't find it so. Because after all, a criterion of clarity and distinctness is immediately relative to how a person conceives the idea, you see. It's person dependent. And Hume does not find the ideas that Descartes and Locke hold to be clear and distinct to be so. We'll notice as we get into his theory of ideas that Hume, in place of talking of clarity and distinctness, talks of force and vivacity. Force and vivacity. Notice that those are affective criteria, not cognitive criteria. It's not so much a matter of thinking with clarity, but feeling with forcefulness that becomes important. Now, that is the sort of thing he makes clear then in the introduction to the treatise. But in section 1 of the inquiry, he does something very parallel to it. And if you've been reading that section 1, you may have noticed, I hope you noticed, that what he was doing was talking of types that he calls abstruse and, on the other hand, practical philosophy. And what he argues for in the long run is a mix of the two. The ideal is some sort of mix of the two. Abstruse philosophy is the sort of thing in which Descartes engaged, John Locke too. Its value in talking theoretically about ideas and knowledge, so forth, its value is in logical precision. It's motivated by intellectual curiosity. But it provides no basis for morality, for knowledge of the external world, or for natural theology. That is to say, the rationalist kinds of approach are impotent in grounding morality, grounding scientific knowledge of the external world, and grounding one's belief in God in rational proofs. Abstruse philosophy with that kind of logical demand is of value only in mathematics. Only in mathematics. So right at the outset then, in that introductory section, what he is doing is proclaiming, announcing his rejection of the Enlightenment spirit, the Enlightenment conception of knowledge, the rule of reason. And in talking about practical philosophy in contrast with this, he's talking about what guides action, why we believe, what we do. And so he says, in talking of a mix for the two,